Odyssey, epic poem in 24 books traditionally attributed to the ancient Greek poet Homer. The poem is the story of Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who wanders for 10 years, although the action of the poem covers only the final 6 weeks, trying to get home after the Trojan War. On his return, he is recognized only by his faithful dog and a nurse. With the help of his son, Telemachus, Odysseus destroys the insistent suitors of his faithful wife, Penelope, and several of her maids who had fraternized with the suitors and re-establishes himself in his kingdom. The story. The Odyssey does not follow a linear chronology. The reader begins in the middle of the tale, learning about previous events only through Odysseus's retelling. The first 4 books set the scene in Ithaca. Penelope, Odysseus's wife, and their young son, Telemachus, are powerless before her arrogant suitors as they despair of Odysseus's return from the siege of Troy. Telemachus is searching for news of his father, who has not been heard from since he left for war nearly 20 years earlier. He journeys secretly to the Peloponnese and seeks out 2 men who fought with Odysseus in the war at Troy, Nestor and Menelaus, and discovers that his father is indeed still alive. The second 4 books, v8, introduce the main character, Odysseus, as he is being released from captivity by the nymph Calypso on the island of Ogygia. He suffers a shipwreck and lands on the shore of Scheria, the land of the Phaeacians. In books 9 to 12, Odysseus tells the Phaeacians of the harrowing journey he and his crew endured as they tried to find their way home, including their encounters with the Lotus Eaters, Laestrygonians, and the sorceress Circe, their narrow escape from the cave of the Cyclops Polyphemus, their ordeal navigating between Scylla and Charybdis, and the final shipwreck in which Odysseus is washed ashore on Ogygia alone. Finally, books 13 to 24, the second half of the poem, find Odysseus back in Ithaca, facing unexpected obstacles and danger. He meets with his protector goddess Athena and reveals himself first to his faithful swineherd Eumaeus and then to Telemachus before developing a complicated plan to dispose of the suitors. During Odysseus's absence, Penelope resisted the importuning of more than 100 suitors who have stayed in Odysseus's house, eating, drinking, and carousing while waiting for her to decide among them. In order to reunite with his wife, Odysseus kills them all, with the aid of Telemachus, Eumaeus, and Philoetius, a servant and cowherd. Scholars date the writing of the Odyssey to about 725 to 675 BCE. The poem was intended for oral performance. It was composed of 12,109 lines written in dactylic hexameter, sometimes referred to as Homeric hexameter. That is, each line consisted of 6 feet, or metrical units, and each foot consisted of a dactyl, a stressed syllable followed by 2 unstressed syllables. The original work may not have been constructed into the 24 books known to the contemporary reader, and the parts were certainly not in codex form. In the ancient world, the poem was likely written in columns on rolls made from papyrus, or possibly some kind of animal skin, such as vellum and parchment. Given its extraordinary length, the poem may have actually occupied 24 individual rolls. Homer's role in the writing of the poem and whether he was literate have been a source for rich scholarly debate, commonly referred to as the Homeric question. Until the 15th century, all volumes of the Odyssey in circulation were in handwritten Greek. In 1488, the first printed version, still in Greek, was produced in Florence. The earliest vernacular translations of the Odyssey from its original Ionic Greek dialect began to appear in Europe during the 16th century. Applying the ancient Greek meter to contemporary vernaculars, especially to words meant to be spoken aloud rather than read privately, posed a particular challenge, forcing translators to add and invent words in order to make the meter work. Some have translated it into prose and some into verse. The first translation into English based on Homer's original Greek was by playwright and poet George Chapman, published in London in 1616. Other notable early translators include Alexander Pope, 1725-26, William Morris, 1887, and Samuel Butler, 1900. Several English translations were published in the 20th century, notably those by Emile Victor, E.V. Rioux, 1945, revised and reissued by his son, D.C.H. Rioux, in 1991, Robert Fitzgerald, 1961, and Richmond Lattimore, 1965. A best-selling verse translation by Robert Fagles, 1996, was praised for employing language both contemporary and timeless. In 2017, Emily Wilson became the first woman to translate and publish the Odyssey in English. The poem has also been adapted for children and young readers and has been issued by Marvel as a comic book. The Odyssey, and the telling of a journey home, has inspired many works of art and fiction such as James Joyce's Ulysses, 1922, Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad, 2005, the tale told through the eyes of Penelope, and the Coen brothers' film O Brother, Where Art Thou? 2000. An everyman's tale and a romance, the Odyssey is filled with adventure, longing and temptation, the struggle between good and evil, and hard-won triumph. It is an enduring classic because its hero, Odysseus, and his story, though centuries old, are remarkably human and continue to grip the contemporary imagination. The Odyssey is often cited by critics as being one of the greatest stories ever told. Despite being blander in expression and sometimes more diffuse in the progress of its action than Homer's other well-known work, the Iliad, the Odyssey provides an even more complex and harmonious structure. The poem is built upon a series of conversations and speeches, in which individual characters emerge as they confront each other and the gods with advice, inquiry, request, resignation, and passion, and the struggle against the gods, nature, and monstrous forces is presented with the help of a poetical language of great simplicity and subtlety. The Odyssey has endured for more than 2,700 years not as the result of its antiquity and its place in Greek culture but rather because of its timeless ability to express on a massive scale so much of the triumph and the frustration of human life.